do you have any tips on like socializing, going out to eat, traveling, those kinds of things? How do you handle those situations?
Well, those are a little difficult. Of course, you run into the people looking at you sideways, like, why can't you eat all this and that kind of thing. And it is a little awkward in the beginning because, you feel like not normal and you feel like I'm on the outside looking in. So for me, for restaurants and things like that, I actually was eating at restaurants even in the first year of my histamine diet. I just obviously had to be very careful, and I didn't have a huge menu variety. So I tended to stick to steakhouses because I know steak isn't the best because beef is an aged meat and therefore higher in bacteria, therefore higher in histamine. But with steakhouses, you can tell them how you want the steak prepared. So you can tell them, don't put any steak spice on, just salt or pepper or garlic butter or whatever. I also ordered Caesar salads, and of course I have to do without the croutons because of my gluten allergy. So I would order that. You can, cheese is also an aged foods, so that you have to be careful of that as well. So maybe order just romaine and say, can I have the dressing on the side? I did okay with Caesar dressing. But some people may be more sensitive. It depends how much vinegar's in it, because vinegar can trigger you. And I would order steamed vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, carrots, things like that, which were safe on the histamine diet. So those kinds of things I did. I would also call ahead to restaurants, ask them questions about the menu. Can you adapt this? Can you adapt that? I would research their menu online. I also brought a little paper with me with all the key foods that are real high triggers for histamine, and I would hand that to the waiter. And so if there was any, say, question in the salad dressing or whatever, I would get him to go to the back and use my little paper and compare it to the ingredients on the salad dressing or whatever, so then he could come back and reassure me, yeah, there's nothing in there that's, so I was a little safer. He didn't have to memorize, which is another thing. I wouldn't want to count on somebody memorizing what I can't have, because there could be mistakes. And as far as socializing with friends and family and things like that, I had to accept the fact that I had to bring food, or bring my own barbecue sauce. And you can't obviously do tomato barbecue sauce because that's another high thing. But I used mayonnaise, honey, and a little bit of white vinegar, which I tolerated. Not everybody will. But I made a barbecue sauce from that, and I would bring my own sauce. So my sister-in-law would put aside the meat, and then they'd use a different brush and use the different sauce for me. If she was going to do something with vegetables that I couldn't have, she'd set aside a little bit of the vegetables for me, and I could add whatever I wanted. It was a little embarrassing in the beginning because I would be asking friends and stuff, well, what's in that sauce? What's in that bottle or whatever, and I didn't want to be a pain to people. So as I said, a lot easier bringing your own sauce, your own salad dressing, your own dessert if they don't have something you can eat. Or, you know what, bring your own food for everything. You're there to socialize. You're not necessarily there to eat their food, and that's, mandatory. So I just bring whatever I need to bring, and the rest they provide. And that's worked very well for me. Things like wedding receptions, things like that, I've actually eaten ahead and then brought a few little foods with me that I could eat at the table with the guests, so that I didn't feel like I'm watching everybody eat. Or I would order in and bring my own meal, as long as the bride and groom were okay with that. So there's various adaptations that you can do. It's not easy. It is embarrassing in the beginning, but frankly, right now, I don't apologize to anybody. This is my life. This is my health. I don't ask diabetics why they do insulin and why they can't do high glycemic things. So why should people ask me what I can eat and what I can't eat? I know what I can and cannot eat, so leave me alone.
Yeah, I love those tips. Those are some great tips, especially like handing the waiter a list instead of sitting there and having to say everything. So,
Exactly. Oh, and the traveling, that's a little harder because you're dealing with, if you're going on a plane travel, which I haven't actually done since 2007, which has been well before I knew what I had. of course, airplane pressure is going to affect you. So I would highly recommend you pre-medicate with antihistamines, mast cell stabilizers, things like that before the flight. Eating low histamine, well 3 or 4 days before you fly or before you travel, so that your histamine levels are reasonably in control. You will run into people you're going to sit beside that are going to have high scents, very smelly soaps or whatever kind of thing, which might trigger you. So if you have asthma tendencies, I hope that you have an asthma medication with you, or get your doctor to prescribe one. I have asthma medication for those times. Some people wear their N95 masks or whatever kind of thing on the plane. It's a little embarrassing, yes, but hey, nowadays with COVID, maybe people won't even think about it. Bringing your own food on board, because of course the airplane won't necessarily have what you can eat. Sometimes you can pre-arrange. I know there are dietary restriction foods they provide, but we're a little bit beyond just gluten-free or just this and that, right? Every time I've had a waitress ask me, like, so what are your allergies? And she's ready to write them down. I basically tell her to have an hour. So bringing your own food, at least you can, that you're safe and you won't stress and everything, because of course travel is stressful anyways. So you want to keep that stress down. So it's hard as far as bringing foods. I know Yasmina mentioned she would bring her own dried fruit with no sulfites in them. She made her own stuff. Crackers, if you can, do crackers. It's difficult. I don't really have a lot of travel foods because I've even struggled with that. When it comes to road trips, I've figured out the route and know which towns we're going to stop in. And I look in each town for restaurants that can accommodate me, and then set that up. And if I have to call ahead to these restaurants to find out, can you adapt to my needs, that's fine. So then again, you have a plan. And I also bring with me in a cooler, some things I can eat should that restaurant be closed, or should they end up failing in providing for me, then I at least have something to eat to the next stop. So that's my travel tips.